Hey guys, SGT here, and I've got a surprise. We've got a new person we haven't spoken to before. His name's Jeff Berwick, and he's from Vigilante. And Jeff, I just want to welcome you to the program because I think we're kindred spirits. So first, on behalf of all of us, hello and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on with you, Sean.
Thanks, man. And we've posted many of your anarchists at SGT Report. Why don't you tell folks a little bit about your philosophy about liberty? Because my understanding is that you're a believer in natural rights, freedom regardless of the Constitution, a sort of constitutionalist who says, look, it's just a piece of paper and you don't need a paper to be free.
That's exactly right. I guess I've always been that way my whole life. I didn't really even know what anarchy was or even libertarianism. Doug Casey was the first person who told me I was a libertarian over dinner about 8 years ago in Vancouver, and I didn't even know what that word was. I had to go look it up. But yes, my whole life I've always found that governments haven't made any sense, and I couldn't really realize or couldn't really understand why anyone would even want these sort of things. It's a completely artificial construct, in my opinion, and to me, us humans, we're basically just humans, and I don't see myself, I was born in Canada, I don't see myself as a Canadian per se. I'd say I was born in Canada, but I'm a human, and we're all just basically humans. I don't really see this whole nation-state thing as having any relevance, and all it does is really cause problems and wars and all those sort of things, or at least enables those things to occur. So, the more I found out, though, about anarchy and about libertarianism, the more I realized that this is exactly what I've always been looking for. It's basically the answer to all the questions I always had, and questions of why does human history have so many wars, and why is there so much poverty in the world? And it's all actually due to governments. If you really look into what governments do, first of all, you can't even have wars without governments, of course. And then secondly, you really, even if the governments didn't have central banks, they still couldn't really have very, very long wars because you can't pay for these wars. Wars are very expensive. So they created that construct called central banking, and of course the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913 on Christmas Eve, and it's just been a disaster. And a few months after it was formed, that's when World War I started, and that's no coincidence. That's been generally the plan of the financial elites, the power elites. What they do is they just use these governments and central banks to basically steal from people and rob them, both through indebting them and also through inflation.
Well, let me just jump in because you're right. They use war to indebt and essentially bankrupt nation states. And when you were saying a moment ago, where does all this hunger come from? Where does all this poverty come from? Of course, I'm sitting here listening to you thinking the banksters, the criminal banking cabal, the banking families. And that's what you found to be true too. And the beautiful thing, the point I want to make is that so many people around the globe are starting to wake up to this fact. And once truth is known, it can't be unknown. So that's really a beautiful thing about what we're seeing, right? We're seeing people wake up all over the planet.
Totally. I would disagree, though. I think once truth is known, it can be unknown through things like genocide and shutting down the internet and those sort of things. But yes, in general, I would agree that things are getting much better. I think the biggest mistake the power elites did was allow the internet to exist because that's what's enabled everything. Without the internet, there'd be no chance for us as humanity, in my opinion, because they really controlled all the media and they controlled all the access to information. Look at schooling. Almost all school in the Western world is done by government, and they only teach you what they want you to know. They don't teach you what a central bank is. They don't teach you how the money system works. And for the most part, they don't teach you anything except for propaganda and teach you how to be a debt slave and how to sit in a cubicle 8 hours a day. That's what you're basically being trained for 12 years of your formative years of your life. So yes, definitely the internet has enabled so many things, and really I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. I would never have found a person who became basically my mentor and really who taught me so much as Doug Casey. I would never have found him. I would never have known who you were, obviously, because there was no way to communicate globally before the internet. So now we have this chance, and I really want to say to people that before the U.S. government tries to shut it down, which they're trying to do with the SOPA and the Intellectual Property Act and all those sort of things, is to try to get as much information as you can now before they start to shut it down. And then, I think there's a lot of ways we can fight back at them shutting it down as well. But just in case they do shut it down to some degree, just make sure we spread this information as quickly and as possible, because the more people who hear this, the better chance of a future we have for everyone.
Yeah, you're right, and I agree with you about the Internet. Of course, we all do. I think this tyrannical cabal is a paper giant, and they want us to be very, very afraid with legislation like S-1867, which is part of the NDAA. They want us to be afraid that they can come and get us. But guess what? Your point about the Internet is a good one, because if we take a look at Wolf Blitzer's interview with U.S. soldier Jesse Thorson, we see the mainstream-controlled media try to stop Jesse, who is an active soldier in the military, saying, I support Ron Paul because Ron Paul doesn't believe in these unconstitutional wars of aggression, and Israel can defend itself. They cut him off. And what I find unbelievable about that is that at any given moment, Wolf Blitzer's show doesn't really have more than 500,000 people watching it. But because of the Internet, that moment of mainstream media control over truth and over free speech went viral on the Internet, and it has now been seen by millions of people who would have never seen it had they just let it play.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love the internet. I saw that I don't watch CNN because I can't, because it's pure brainwashing and it's painful, but I do have to sort of see it sometimes when I walk past it in airports when it's shouting out at you and all that sort of thing. But I saw that video literally moments after it happened, and I thought that was just amazing. And for a brief second there, they actually showed the man behind the curtain, basically, right? Because the second that truth was spoken, all of a sudden it was just shut down, and you could just see the panic, and Wolf Blitzer just, we lost contact and all that sort of stuff, and then they went straight into repeating the same old message that, yes, we're over there fighting for our freedom and all that sort of stuff. And no, it's amazing. The internet really gives us the one of the only chances that we've ever had as humanity. The first one was, of course, the Gutenberg Press. So before that, there was no chance. After Gutenberg Press, there was some chance. And now, thanks to the internet, there is complete chance for complete peace and prosperity for humanity in the future, and to unchain ourselves from being slaves to these financial and power elite, the cabals, the central banks, those sort of things. And you really take advantage of it right now, because no one knows what's going to happen. They've finally fully realized that this is a major threat to them, the internet, and they're doing everything they can right now to prepare to basically shut it down.
Yeah, well, CNN, Fox News, the rest of the mainstream Mockingbird media, certainly is controlled, and none of us are big fans of CNN or Fox or MSNBC either, but every now and then you see kernels of truth shared, and you see the men behind the curtain revealed for what they are: weak, scared, tyrannical monsters. And that's what we saw with this piece on CNN with Jesse Thorson. And a little background for folks who might be listening: Wolf Blitzer was one of the top lobbyists for Israel back a couple decades ago, before he started his career at CNN. So, yeah, this is all managed, and their tricks aren't working anymore. That's the beautiful part about the Ron Paul revolution. That's the beautiful part about the Internet, is that we can all see this for what it is now. And it's a shell game. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a house of cards that's collapsing, and humanity just wants to live in peace. And I think that's ultimately the path that we're headed on. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be painful, but we're on our way there. Just to be clear, I want to ask you about being an anarchist, because for many of us, we don't really know what that means. Now, you say that the Constitution is just a piece of paper, but in this grand experiment of the United States of America, it is the most brilliant piece of paper ever written, right? So where do you stand on the Founding Fathers and the gift they gave us here in the United States, and that we all need to stand up and fight for? And where do you stand on the Ron Paul revolution? Are you a Ron Paul supporter?
Well, let me start by defining anarchism, and then I'll answer your questions. Just for those who don't know, of course, just the way that the media, the state-controlled media, tries to control all the news and information, they've been trying to ruin this word now for decades. They try to make it sound like anarchy means chaos, it means bomb throwing. It actually means the exact opposite, of course. It basically just means that you live by yourself and you don't hurt other people. It basically lives by the axiom of the non-aggression principle, and that's what anarchists do. And they basically don't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do, which is what governments do. So we don't like governments because governments are anti-anarchists, they're statist. And so to answer your question about do I support Ron Paul, that was actually a very difficult question for me, because as an anarchist, I don't support anything political. I don't support the state. I don't recognize the state. And the state, to me, is just a big, large criminal organization. However, that said, and I've interviewed many people on Anarchast, including Lou Rockwell and Doug Casey and many others, and they all say that no one has opened more eyes in the world to anarchy or libertarianism or freedom than Ron Paul. And that's a huge statement. And So from that perspective, I 100% support him. I think he's a very principled man, and I support him for that reason. He sticks to his principles, and his principles are, he's a constitutionalist, which is fine. That's basically what you would call an minarchist, a small government person, which of all of the political classes, those are the people that anarchists like best. They're the closest to true anarchy. So they believe that they need a small state to survive, so a small state that's in control of defense from attack, and also police force and courts to settle disputes and those sort of things. So that's what Ron Paul stands for, and I respect him for that. And he's voted every single time on his principles, so I support it. Now, as for what happens from here, I don't think he's going to become president. I think you can just see what's happening right now. The media is completely trying to make him go away, and I don't think even the majority of Americans are ready for what he's talking about, because most Americans nowadays actually live off of the government. There's actually 50% right now of Americans are net tax recipients, so they actually receive more from the government than they give in taxes. But if he did get in, that's a really tough question as well, because what could possibly happen? The U.S. Government is bankrupt. There's no doubt about that. The empire is over. There's no doubt about that. And it's just, how does it fall apart from here? And it's actually a good thing. It will fall apart. None of those things are good. That has nothing to do with freedom or anything. That has nothing to do with making people happy. That has everything to do with statism and making the government powerful, so a small group of people can profit from it. So if he becomes president and then the whole thing falls apart, there'll be an opportunity for the enemies of freedom to state that it was because of Ron Paul that it all fell apart. So they'll use it and they'll say free market policies made the U.S. collapse. So that's my only concern. I'd rather see Barack Obama sit there as it all collapses and try to read off his teleprompters and explain to people why they're all on food stamps and why they're starving to death because no one will accept the U.S. dollar anymore because they printed too much of it, and that sort of thing. But in general, sure, I definitely support Ron Paul, and it's definitely interesting to watch what's going on right now. We haven't seen anything like this in modern history in the U.S. in terms of liberty. The closest was Ronald Reagan, and Ron Paul is far and beyond past Reagan in terms of believing in true freedom.
Hey guys, thanks for watching part 1, and don't miss part 2.